Since the tech specs and build quality are almost flawless on all mice these days, one of the only things that you can actually talk about is the shape. And having that perfect shape for you that just feels like it's molded to your hand sometimes almost feels like you're cheating. And for me personally, that is the all new NP-01S Ergo. And if you want to know what this shape is like and why it's so good, and also how it compares to the NP-01S, then definitely stay tuned for this video because I'm going to tell you all about it. But before we get into that, as a quick disclaimer, I did buy this with my own money, but as always, my opinions stay my own as they always do. And if you're at all interested in these types of videos, definitely make sure to hit the subscribe and the notification bell right next to it to get notified for any upcoming videos. Now, if you got the mouse within the first 3 days and you didn't have a return history, then you also got this carrying case. It does look pretty cool. It has a big handle, tons of space down here for the cable and dongle, and then a platform up here with a strap to hold your mouse in. And yeah, overall perfect for LANs, and I'm definitely going to use this. And VAXEE, if you're watching this, please make this available to buy for customers because this is awesome. And then for the packaging itself, you might think that this is really cheap for €160 mouse. And yes, it kind of is, but me as a reviewer, I'm very thankful for this because this is just super minimalistic, very eco-friendly, despite there being some plastic in here. But overall, I just really love minimalistic packaging. And I think that this one is epic. It has the mouse inside of here with the cable and dongle right underneath. It does have a protection sheet in between so it doesn't scratch anything. And then you also have this card for the DPI, hertz, and also the debounce time. And yes, you're seeing this correctly. It does indeed have a power switch. No longer will I have to hold this button and see all of this clutter. But now it's much more minimalistic with the DPI, hertz, and debounce time here. Just color coordinated, and you have the power switch up here. Overall, I think this is perfect. And speaking about perfect, so is the build quality. Man, I cannot get this thing to creak. The side-to-side movement on the buttons, even when pressing down, is absolutely perfect on my unit. I have nothing to complain about, and I think that even Stubby wouldn't be able to break this. And another awesome upgrade is the web driver that's available now for most VAXEE mice. If you have an older model, I think that most of them can be upgraded with the firmware, but that is all visible on their own website, of course. If you want to know more about their web driver, I'll definitely show all about it later in this video. Of course, the plug and play experience is awesome, but having to spend over 10 minutes just to find the right guide for your mouse, just to change the lift-off distance? Yeah, that's not it. Now, getting into the important part, the shape. If you know anything about the NP-01S, you know that it's rather small but long enough for most hand sizes, but it is definitely a narrow mouse. And you also know that it's an asymmetrical mouse with 0 tilt. And the tilt is indeed one of the changes. The NP-01S Ergo has a very slight tilt, much less than normal Ergo mice, but it is noticeable enough for it to be more comfortable over prolonged times of use. However, the main difference here on the NP-01S Ergo is definitely the width towards the front and also the width on the back for it to have more support for your palm. It is definitely more filling in your hand, so if you're a palm gripper, I could definitely see you preferring this over the NP-01S. But since I do not sin and actually play a pincer or aggressive claw grip depending on what I'm feeling like, the added support here in the rear, especially on the right side, is absolutely awesome. It really does feel like a mix between an actual Ergo mouse and the NP-01S and NP-01 having a baby. So this is just taking the best of all worlds and putting it into one. And that is why I think this shape is so awesome, because it is much more comfortable to use over time compared to the NP-01S for me personally with my 19x10 hands, since I no longer have this feeling where I'm kind of cramping with my pinky and ring finger. The other main difference is also that the sensor is placed slightly higher. The difference is very slight, but it is definitely noticeable. And for me personally, it's absolutely awesome because I do place my thumb a tiny bit more towards the front. So over on the NP-01S, my thumb actually ends up a bit higher than the sensor itself. And the way that I grip the NP-01S Ergo, it is right on the line as the sensor itself. Whilst I really do love the NP-01S and it's great for my aggressive claw, I do think that I end up a bit high up here in the mouse where the wall kind of goes towards the outside. So my thumb is kind of pressing on this curve, which just doesn't feel natural. Over here on the NP-01S Ergo, I feel a lot more support here, so it feels much more natural to actually pincer claw it. And since it has a bit of tilt, combined with that pincer claw grip, it just feels really natural to aim. And my thumb also ends up at a much more comfortable spot where it doesn't feel like it's being pushed back. And overall, the curvature here doesn't feel as protrusive as on the NP-01S, but that might just be because of the difference in the overall size, because it is definitely a bit bigger than the NP-01S. So yeah, if you've ever tried the NP-01S and it didn't feel like it was comfortable enough for you, this is the perfect mouse for you. I even think that a lot of people who used the NP-01 and thought that was the perfect mouse for them, that they might prefer this one because it's more maneuverable but still has a lot of support where it needs it. But yeah, calling this an ergo mouse is kind of stretching it because the tilt is so minimal compared to most mice out there. So pretty much think of it as an asymmetrical mouse but with a very slight tilt. But yeah, everything else about this mouse is just the same as the NP-01S V2, I assume. The absolute perfect and best coding out there, 100% PTFE skates, awesome engineering with no build quality issues, and overall just nothing to complain about. At around 60 grams, I do think that it might be a bit too heavy for some people who play Fortnite or something like that, but at the end of the day, that's just personal preference. In terms of the battery life, it seems to be absolutely great. I've been running it at either 4 or 2K and I've only had to charge it once within the past like 7 or 8 days. But what I really want to show you is the new web driver. Now, if you want to change any settings, I'd highly recommend you to just go over to vcc.vaxee.co, and from there on you can just connect your mouse. And over here on the dashboard, you'll be able to see all your current settings, which is actually awesome just so you can see all your settings at a glance. Up here, you can check your current firmware version. Then you can turn the different DPI stages on or off. And now you can actually change them as well. You can also set your polling rate here. And then you can also set the debounce time over here. And then there's this new thingy. I'm gonna be fully honest with you, I cannot feel the difference between these two modes. You can either choose between a smooth and responsive mode or a stable and controlled. Now you might just think that this is just motion sync, but it is not because that setting is over here. So yeah, just as VAXEE recommends, I also would just recommend you to use either of these modes, go in game, see what it feels like, change it up and try it again. But if you don't notice a difference, I might just go for the top one. Now over on the second to last page, you also have the liftoff distance that you can change. This has also been changed accordingly to the new skates because the new skates are actually a bit more thick. VAXEE noticed that a lot of their users like to change their skates for third-party ones, and a lot of the third-party skates are very thick compared to stock skates. So they've changed the liftoff distance accordingly to match that, which is absolutely awesome. Great job, VAXEE. So now you can just go for either the low or high liftoff distance. And you won't have the issue where the low liftoff distance just feels insanely low because you put on core pads. Over here on the left side, you have the competitive mode and the standard mode with either motion sync on or off. Yet again, I don't really notice a difference between motion sync on or off, so I just have it off. This also makes sure that you have the absolute lowest latency possible, and the mouse input feels like it's wired just like any other really high quality mouse these days, which pretty much all of them are. And over here on the last page, you can also change your keybinds. Now, this isn't the prettiest web driver in the entire world, but this is more than enough. I'm so glad that VAXEE finally have a web driver, and this is pretty much perfect. Now, to the conclusion, who is this mouse for? If you've ever tried the NP-01S, NP-01, or any similar shape, and you've just wished that it were either bigger than the NP-01S or smaller than the NP-01, or just overall more comfortable, or just like that perfect middle ground that is very safe to use and just overall super comfortable, definitely get this thing because this is awesome. But if you've already got something like the NP-01S or the NP-01 or any other similar mouse and you're very happy with them, just don't get it. I'd actually go so far to say that this is pretty much one of the safest but not boring asymmetric or ergo-like shapes. I still wouldn't call this a full-on ergo because the tilt is so slight compared to most ergo mice. And when I say ergo, you think of mice like the DeathAdder V3 Pro or the Lamsu Thorn or whatever. So just think of this as a slightly more comfortable asymmetric mouse. But yeah, 160 euros is a lot of money. And 60 grams of weight isn't for everyone. Me personally, I don't mind it whatsoever, even in games like the finals where I do prefer playing with a lower sensitivity, and in super hectic scenarios where you're swiping your arm around like crazy, I don't really notice the weight just because the shape is so darn comfortable. But if you've never tried a VAXEE mouse and this thing looks like it might be something for you, especially with hands that are around 19 by 10 centimeters or slightly smaller or even slightly bigger, then I can definitely recommend this. I just wouldn't recommend it if you've got small hands like 16 by 9 or something like that, because then it would definitely feel a bit big. In terms of grip styles, I definitely recommend it for a aggressive claw, relaxed claw, pincer claw, or maybe even a palm grip because there is a lot of support up here. But if you're a fingertip grip user, I probably wouldn't even look at this, just because I would say that symmetrical flat mice are just more ideal for that. Anyway, that's about it. I can't really say much more about this mouse. Just keep in mind, as I've said a billion times already, it just feels like an asymmetrical mouse with a slight tilt and not a full-on tilt like the E1 over here, for example. It's really not similar at all, but it is definitely in my top 5 shapes of all time. If you're at all interested in these kind of videos, definitely make sure to hit the subscribe button and a notification bell right next to it, because I do have some other mice that I need to talk about. So I hope you guys will be there for that video whenever it comes out. Anyway, that's about it. Peace out.